This is Akira, and that, my friend, is the inventor of a game called Infinity. After 15 long years since its creation, the time had finally come to shut it down forever. Akira felt a deep sadness, for the game he had poured his heart and soul into was about to vanish completely. He stood before one of the game's main characters, the Demon Lord, bidding him farewell. He told him that he had fulfilled his duty of spreading bloodshed and sorrow across the world throughout the game's lifetime. When the clock struck midnight, the game closed as planned. But suddenly, Akira felt himself being pulled inside the game itself. Something strange was happening to him. He walked toward a lake nearby and gazed into his reflection, and that's when the shock hit him. He realized that he had somehow entered the body of the very character he had just been saying goodbye to, the Demon Lord himself. He shouted in disbelief, "Why did I end up inside this wicked old man's body?" But after a moment he calmed down, remembering that this character was his own creation to begin with. Akira, or Konai, as he was now known inside the game, tried to make sense of what had happened, wondering why he was in this dark forest and where all these weapons had come from. He opened the Administrator Privileges system, the developer's interface, in hopes of finding something useful, but quickly discovered that he lacked the necessary permissions to access the information he needed. Frustration grew within Konai, as he couldn't figure out what was required of him to unlock those restricted data files. As he continued walking through the forest, he felt as though something was chasing him. Suddenly, a terrified girl appeared before him. He approached her and asked, "What's wrong, little one?" She screamed, "You have to get out of here, quickly!" Moments later, a massive creature emerged from between the trees. Konai glanced at it and said sarcastically, "Is this beast yours? If it is, you'd better teach it how to behave in front of strangers." The girl cried out, "No! That's a demon! Please run before it attacks you." The monster stepped forward and growled in a deep, menacing voice, "Weak human, I'll tear your body apart and bathe in your blood tonight." It lunged at him, slashing Konai's face with its claws. He stumbled backward, trying to block the attack, and suddenly, a surge of immense power burst from within him. His eyes glowed a vivid crimson. He roared, "You'll regret that." Konai charged forward with overwhelming strength, striking the creature so hard that it was sent flying through the forest before its body exploded into pieces. Breathing heavily, Konai muttered to himself, "I know this game system inside and out, but I've never seen a monster like that before." The young girl he had saved had witnessed the entire battle. Amazed, terrified by his power, she said, "Oh my god, you're incredibly strong." Konai replied calmly, "I only did what I had to do to defend myself. I'm not a bad person." But she shook her head and said, "No, you must be a demon. No human could defeat a creature like that so easily." At that moment, we learn that the girl's name is Hojin. Konai asked her, "Do you know a country called Japan?" She looked puzzled and answered, "I've never heard of a place by that name." That's when Konai realized that this world was known as the Kingdom of Light, a land where people revered their rulers with utmost respect and unwavering love. The monster that had appeared moments ago was said to have been sealed away long ago by the great ruler himself. Yet now, no one knew why that seal had been broken. As for Konai, he still couldn't understand why an old man like him had been summoned to such a strange world. He and Jin continued walking together until they reached a clear, shimmering lake. Jin looked exhausted, her clothes dirty and torn. Konai said to her calmly, "Why don't you go down and wash in the lake? I'll wait for you here." Jin stepped into the water, feeling pure joy. This was the first time in her life she had ever experienced true cleanliness and refreshment. She glanced toward Konai and saw him opening the system interface. Finally, information was beginning to appear normally before him. For a fleeting, absurd moment, Jin wondered if he planned to devour her after she finished bathing, so that he could eat her clean. She didn't even know where such a strange thought had come from. In truth, Konai had merely opened the item storage within his system and taken out a towel to offer her. Then, leaving her to wash, he wandered into the forest to explore. While walking through the trees, he realized that this area matched the Infinity game map exactly. He understood that he would need to collect new points to enhance his combat skills, but one question troubled him. How could he gain points in such an empty world? Jin approached him from behind, thanking him sincerely for the supplies he had given her. Konai then asked, "Do monsters usually appear this often in the forest?" She replied, "If the number of monsters increases around the city, it means the city is close to destruction." He then asked if she knew where the monster that had attacked them had come from, and she said it was sealed inside the Shrine of Wishes, deep within the forest. They set off together in that direction, but Konai soon noticed that Jin was limping, her foot injured and bleeding. Smiling gently, he said, "It's all right. I'll carry you so we can reach there faster." At that, Jin began to cry bitterly. "I've always been a nuisance to the people of my village," she said through her tears. "They hate me because my job is to collect garbage from the streets, and I smell awful. When the monster appeared, they threw me to it as a sacrifice to get rid of me." Konai looked at her with pity and said softly, "You're a kind girl, Jin. Your scent isn't unpleasant at all." As they walked on, Konai drew a few words on the ground and asked her to read them, testing whether they spoke the same language. To his relief, she understood everything he wrote, and at that moment, communication between them became far easier. Konai then dashed at full speed toward the Shrine of Wishes, and when they arrived, he asked Jin to remain outside, for he felt a danger surrounding the place. Konai entered the shrine cautiously and discovered the bodies of mysterious people strewn across the floor. He searched for the perpetrator until a majestic woman named Idol appeared before him and said, "At last we meet, O Lord of Demons. Many wishes have come to you in your life, but today will be the time of your final wish." Konai was astonished and asked her who she was, what she knew about him, and whether she was the reason he had been summoned to this world. Idol answered that the people slain in the shrine were the ones responsible for summoning him, not she. Konai asked her why the seal of the monster that had appeared earlier had been broken, and she replied, "That monster freed itself by its own power. It used the surrounding forests as its lair and began demanding sacrifices from the nearby villages." Then Konai remembered what Jin had told him earlier about being a victim of that monster, while Idol continued speaking to him. Those people had been eagerly awaiting Konai's appearance, but the monster ambushed them suddenly to distract and slaughter them all. Konai then said to Idol angrily, "I do not care for these tales. All I want now is to return to my world." Idol, however, told him she could not grant that, though she could bestow upon him great power. She placed a ring on his hand, and Konai became furious as he felt a strange energy in the ring binding him. He tried repeatedly to remove the ring but could not, and suddenly Idol vanished from before him. Konai left the Shrine of Wishes and asked Jin to guide him to the great capital. She told him she would accompany him, for her village had once offered her as a sacrifice to the monster, and she could not return there now. Konai thought to himself that since he knew no one in this world but Jin, having her by his side would be extremely useful. The two continued toward the capital, and while on the road, Konai asked in bewilderment, "Why has no one among the capital's elders intervened regarding the sacrifices offered to that monster?" Jin replied, "My lord, the reason is that this region is very remote from the capital, and our news does not easily reach them." They continued until they passed Jin's village. Konai then asked her to enter, greet her people, and take whatever supplies she needed. At that moment, Konai activated the stealth skill, his body becoming completely transparent, and he communicated with Jin through the telepathy skill so that no one would sense his presence. Jin entered the village, but her people, whom Konai contemptuously called pigs in his thoughts, gathered around her and began to bully her. One of them even hurled a stone at her. Konai grew furious, broke from stealth, and suddenly a strange voice emanated from the ring on his hand saying, "You now have the authority to destroy whatever displeases you, O Lord of Demons." Konai swiftly stepped forward and blocked the stone before it could strike Jin. The villagers were stunned by his strength and asked fearfully, "Are you a follower of the Gruel Beast?" The very monster Konai had slain earlier. But he ignored their words entirely and said to Jin coldly, "Go inside, take whatever you need, and rid yourself of these dogs." When the villagers realized that Konai was none other than the Lord of Demons himself, terror spread across their faces. Some cried out, "This girl will bring ruin upon our village at the hands of the Demon Lord." Konai's fury ignited further. He drew out his lighter and hurled it toward one of the village houses. Flames erupted instantly. He lifted Jin onto his back and fled swiftly, apologizing that he could not allow her to gather her belongings. But Jin thanked him warmly, saying he had saved her from the hands of those bullies. Konai replied calmly, "You are the reason this happened. You always saw yourself as less than others, and that is why it was easy for them to mock you." Jin was deeply moved by his words, utterly convinced, and told herself she would change from this day forward. Afterward, the two heroes began preparing to continue their journey toward the capital. The scene then shifted to another place. Inside a luxurious carriage sat a girl named Luna. She told her driver to move slowly. She did not wish to face any accident before she could bring the Lord of Demons under her control. The driver glanced at her and said, "My lady, I feel you may have acted rashly in deciding to go alone without your great siblings." But Luna answered with confidence, saying she wished to rely on herself just once in her life. At that moment, one of the soldiers informed the chief of spies that Luna would be passing through their region. The chief assumed she was coming to attack them and ordered his men to prepare for battle, but the soldier clarified that she was not heading toward them at all. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Konai and Jin continued their journey. As night began to fall, Konai decided they should stop and camp in a safe spot until morning. He then summoned tools from the system that allowed him to construct a small house. Jin stood in astonishment at what she saw, and Konai smiled, saying, "This house will protect us if anyone attacks during the night." Jin entered the house and found inside a basin of warm water. Konai told her that one day he would build her an entire lake. Then, exhausted, he lay down on the bed and murmured to himself, "When I finally gather enough points to fully master the system's control and privileges, will I then be able to return to my world?" Yet moments later, he realized that the Infinity game system to which he belonged never had a return to the real world option in the first place. And so, he hoped that within the capital they were heading to, he might find a clue, any clue, that could lead him back home. By the following morning, the leader of the spies had already prepared his men to ambush Luna as she passed through the area. Yet instead of encountering her, they stumbled upon Konai and Jin. Believing it to be an elaborate trap, the leader assumed that if they attacked Konai, Luna might strike them from behind. So he decided to launch a swift assault on Konai before it was too late. Sensing their presence from a great distance, Konai gently set Jin down and told her to move aside so he could prepare for what was coming. Suddenly, a rain of arrows descended upon him in massive numbers, but he managed to deflect them all at the very last moment using a skill called the wavering barrier. Konai muttered to himself, "Pathetic weaklings," then raised his voice in challenge. "Instead of hiding like cowards, show yourselves and face me directly." At once, a large number of the leader's men emerged, wielding sharp blades and weapons, ready to strike. The leader sneered, "Why do you think yourself so strong? Are you a magic user? The barrier you cast isn't something any ordinary human could create." Konai answered with unshakable confidence, "I am the Lord of Demons. Naturally, I can repel such a pitiful attack with ease." In a flash, one of the leader's men lunged at Konai from behind, but Konai struck him away with the back of his hand, sending him flying a great distance. The leader gasped, "I knew it! You are a magic user." Just then, Luna appeared out of nowhere and unleashed a swift, devastating strike upon the leader's soldiers, knocking them all to the ground. She looked at Konai, a hint of admiration and disbelief in her voice, and said, "Who would have thought that I would finally meet the Lord of Demons himself?" Meanwhile, as the leader of the spies resorted to underhanded tactics in battle, he realized that he was doomed to die that very day. He ordered his remaining men to retreat immediately, but Luna drew her weapon and activated a powerful skill known as Golden Rush, a barrage of golden arrows that pierced through the bodies of the bandits with terrifying speed. Konai attempted to raise a barrier to protect himself and Jin, but Luna's overwhelming power shattered it instantly. Furious, Konai confronted her, demanding that she apologize for attacking him without reason. Luna, however, replied coolly that her assault had not been directed at him at all, but at the bandits. Still, Konai continued to provoke her, until Luna, losing her patience, ordered her soldiers to attack him. The soldiers drew their weapons and charged, but Konai activated his barrier in the nick of time. He then snatched a weapon from one of them and retaliated mercilessly, cutting through the soldiers one after another until they all lay collapsed on the ground. Luna watched in horror and disbelief, wishing the earth would swallow her whole after witnessing his terrifying strength. Konai approached her and struck her relentlessly. She screamed at the top of her lungs, begging for mercy. Without a word, Konai seized the money she carried and left her behind. Konai then made his way to the marketplace in the city of Yahoo, where he decided to buy some food with the money he had taken from Luna. Afterward, he continued his journey with Jin until they arrived at a luxurious hotel. Entering the reception hall, Konai requested the finest room available. The room was extravagantly priced, yet he paid the amount with ease, for it was not his money after all. When they entered the room, Jin was astonished by its beauty and elegance. Soon after, Konai took her to a nearby boutique to buy her suitable clothes to replace her worn-out ones. The shopkeeper, upon seeing Jin, assumed she was his servant, but Konai took out a gold coin and said firmly that he wanted the very best they had. The man froze in awe at the sight of the gold, and the attendants eagerly led Jin to select the most exquisite dresses. Moments later, she stepped out wearing a luxurious gown of stunning elegance. Konai was captivated by her beauty and asked the shopkeeper to prepare a full collection of dresses similar to that one. Afterward, he took her to an upscale restaurant for dinner. Everyone there began whispering about them, for Konai looked like an exceptionally wealthy man. Some murmured that the rich stranger who had bought a dress for that poor girl with a gold coin must surely be one of the nobles, or perhaps a powerful sorcerer. At that moment, Jin began to feel flustered. His kindness toward her and the way he granted her every wish made her feel as though she were dreaming. But suddenly, Suddenly, Luna burst into the restaurant, furious, and marched straight toward them shouting, "Are you sitting here eating with my money? What a shameless face you have, man." Konai looked at her calmly and replied with mocking composure, "You were the one who gave me the money yourself. So do not blame me now, my lady. It was of your own will, not by force." In truth, Luna had only done that because she had no other way to stop Konai from beating her further. He then ordered her to sit down and stop causing a scene, reminding her that they did not want to make a disturbance in such a place. Konai, ever the composed young man, stood up and apologized to everyone present for the commotion, assuring them he would make it up to them. He then instructed the staff to serve a bottle of apple juice to every table at his expense. Luna's anger only deepened as she watched him spend her money so freely, as though it were his own. After finishing their meal, Konai carried Jin in his arms as they left the restaurant, for the large gown she wore made it impossible for her to ride on his back. When they returned to the hotel, a sudden knock echoed at the door. It was Luna, asking to spend the night with them, as she had no money to stay elsewhere. Konai asked about her men, and she replied that she had ordered them to stay away, fearing they might be put in danger because of her. Konai's heart softened, and he allowed her to stay. He even returned her money as a gesture of goodwill. As time passed, Luna and Jin began to grow closer, eventually becoming good friends. Meanwhile, Konai took the crown Jin used to wear and stored it in the item inventory within the game system. He felt fortunate, for his system allowed him to store an unlimited number of items, unlike other players who could keep no more than 10. Later, Jin and Luna joined him, and Luna began to share information about the rulers. She explained that all of them had perished after sealing the beast known as Groll, as the sealing ritual had drained their life force completely. However, in the kingdom they were now headed toward, 2 rulers still remained, Ophan and Sur, both devoting their lives to helping the people. The scene then shifts to a young woman named Killer, one of the rulers, who was on her way with her men to Yahoo City. They drove at full speed, their vehicles slicing through the wind. One of her men, named Mond, declared that once they found Luna, they would capture her and bring her back to the palace at once. Killer was furious with Luna for acting on her own and going to the city to capture the demon lord without permission. Yet, deep down, her true anger came from discovering that someone had slain the beast Groll, and Luna had told her nothing about this mysterious person. We then returned to Konai, who now understood the situation of the rulers clearly thanks to Luna's explanations. He asked her about the whereabouts of Ophan and Seir, and she told him that countless ages had passed since their last appearance. People now believed that the stone statues found in the Shrine of Wishes were representations of Ophan herself. After that, Konai went out into the city, thinking to himself that he needed to gather more information about the capital before heading there, so he could find a way to escape this world. But first, he began pondering how to earn some money instead of remaining broke. He took out an ancient cup, a precious relic dear to his heart, and made his way toward the marketplace. Konai went to sell the cup he had in his possession, asking the shopkeeper to estimate a good price for it. The man was taken aback, saying in surprise that it was strange for Konai, about whom rumors spread that he was a wealthy man from a royal family, to end up selling a mere cup for money. But Konai replied calmly, "Try not to believe everything you hear in rumors." He sold the cup for 5 gold coins, a rather high price, then left and made his way toward the hotel. However, as he walked away, he suddenly heard someone call his name from behind. Turning around, he looked to see who it was. At that same moment, the scene shifts to the Shrine of Wishes, where a group of villains had gathered, furious that they had failed to capture the demon lord, Konai. Yet their leader declared that their new goal was to eliminate all the remaining rulers who were still alive. Back to Konai, he turned to find Killer standing before him, flanked by a large number of soldiers. Thinking to himself, he murmured, "Who is this girl? She seems insane and clearly looking for trouble." Killer, unaware that the man before her was the demon lord himself, raised her voice and said, "I wish the demon lord would appear before me right now and show himself." Just then, Luna appeared and demanded that Killer leave the place and avoid causing any commotion with Konai. But Killer grew furious and snapped, "How dare you act on your own and run away without informing me? Do you think you've become the commander now?" Suddenly, the same villains who had gathered at the shrine appeared before Killer, shouting, "Today will be your end." Then they unleashed a skill called Frozen Bird, which sent a storm of icy arrows flying toward her. But Killer swiftly drew her weapon and managed to block the attack. At that moment, Konai realized that these were the same enemies who had previously tried to ambush him near the shrine, many of whom he had seen slain by the monster Groll. Luna drew her weapon as well, and Killer's entire army prepared for battle. Luna smirked and mocked the villains, saying, You should feel honored because you'll die by my magic, the magic of Luna. But suddenly, one of the villains pulled out a strange magical substance and hurled it toward Killer, Luna, and their soldiers. The moment it reached them, everyone collapsed to the ground, paralyzed and unable to move. Seizing the opportunity, the villains fired a rain of arrows at Luna and Killer, but Mond, Killer's personal guard, stepped in front of the arrows, shielding them with his body. Moments later, he fell to the ground, drenched in his own blood, breathing his last. At that very moment, the magical substance began to drift toward Konai himself, who stood frozen, unsure of what to do. Suddenly, the ring on his hand began to glow, and a voice echoed from within it. I shall unleash a magic bomb that will annihilate everyone in this place. But Konai shouted in defiance, No! I won't let Luna or Killer die. The ring instantly drained his energy, causing him to collapse to the ground, unable to move. Struggling to remain conscious, Konai opened the game system interface, desperately searching for anything that could help him. With no other choice left, he activated a special ability, Character Transformation. In an instant, his appearance changed completely, and a dark, mysterious aura burst forth from his body, restoring balance to the chaotic energy around him. The spell that had weakened Killer and her soldiers began to dissolve, drawn back toward the source of the aura. The villains stared in disbelief at his sudden transformation and demanded, Who are you? Konai's cold voice echoed through the battlefield. How pitiful. You only know how to flaunt your power in front of women. Believing he was one of Killer's allies, the villains prepared to attack, charging at him with all their might. But Konai moved only once, one swift, precise motion, and they all fell to the ground at once, as though a violent storm had swept through them. Everyone was paralyzed with shock at his overwhelming power. One of the villains, trembling, tried to reactivate the magical substance, but before he could, Konai leapt toward him and kicked him square in the face, sending his teeth flying through the air. Then, Konai invoked another skill, a devastating chain of rapid, thunderous strikes. But before he could unleash his full assault, the remaining villains fled in terror. A mocking smile curved across Konai's lips. Do you truly believe leaving a battle is as easy as entering it? He said coldly. Gathering all his energy into his fist, he struck the ground with a mighty blow. The earth split open beneath him, and from its depths rose a massive black spirit, a colossal phantom that roared as it surged forward, crushing the villains in one overwhelming, annihilating strike. After the battle ended, Killer stood in stunned disbelief, unable to comprehend the overwhelming power she had just witnessed. She slowly approached him and said with genuine remorse, I'm sorry you had to risk your life because of me. Konai replied with a calm smile. What happened was nothing more than a trivial brawl to me. It was then revealed that the form he had transformed into was known as the Silver Dragon. Elsewhere, one of the Dark Organization's members reached their leader to report what had occurred. The leader immediately realized that Konai might have secretly formed an alliance with the rulers and was now protecting them from danger. Konai soon returned to his original form, and Jean came rushing to check on him, asking whether he had seen that white warrior who saved them. Konai answered that he hadn't, while Luna excitedly spoke of how strong and handsome the mysterious fighter was. Rage quietly boiled inside Konai, who longed to tell her that he himself was that very man. In another place, a girl named Mikan, a skilled sword fighter, was speaking with her friend Yuka, saying, Stop wasting time. We must continue our journey and look for adventurers capable of defeating the deadly sandwolves. As they flipped through a magazine, their eyes suddenly fell upon Konai's picture beneath a notice that read, A massive reward for anyone who finds him. Both girls looked at each other in astonishment. What could this man have done? They wondered aloud. Meanwhile, Konai, along with his two companions Jean and Luna, continued their journey toward a new destination. Konai handed Luna a change of clothes so she wouldn't be easily recognized. At the same time, Mikan and Yuka were making their way through a vast desert swept by scorching winds. As they observed the footprints scattered across the sand, Yuka warned cautiously, The sand wolves. They're among the most dangerous creatures we could ever face. These sandwolves were savage beasts known for destroying entire cities, but Mikan replied with quiet confidence, As long as there aren't too many of them, the city should remain safe. Just as she finished speaking, both girls felt the presence of the wolves closing in around them. They drew their swords, ready for any sudden attack. Then, in an instant, a massive pack of sandwolves surrounded them from all sides, forcing Mikan and Yuka to flee, realizing they could never stand against such overwhelming numbers. At that moment, Kunai had stopped his vehicle to step out and light a cigarette, trying to calm the storm of thoughts that threatened to explode inside his head as he pondered how to develop his skills and increase his power. But when he turned around, he was stunned to see a pack of sand wolves charging straight toward him. His eyes gleamed with excitement, seeing it as a perfect chance to sharpen his combat abilities. Yet when he realized how vast their numbers were, he hesitated for a moment, wondering how he would face them all. Kunai activated the barrier skill, but it held off only one wolf before collapsing. With no time to waste, he prepared to unleash everything he had. He dashed forward, activating the pounce skill. Countless weapons materialized around him, striking the wolves from every direction. At the same moment, he summoned a sand vortex that immobilized the creatures completely, then finished the assault by launching a massive explosive orb. The blast shook the ground, wiping out most of the wolves, while the few survivors fled in terror. Kunai approached Mikan and Yuka and said firmly, "You should be more cautious next time, so you don't end up in such a situation again." Then he returned to his vehicle and continued on his way. Jin, who had witnessed the entire battle, was awestruck by Kunai's power. Despite his sinister and intimidating aura, he had saved her from danger, treated her with kindness, and made all those who once wronged her regret their actions. After some time had passed, Kunai stopped again and opened the system to check whether his combat skills had improved. He discovered that his level had indeed risen after his battle with the wolves, filling him with quiet satisfaction. He brought Luna and Jean along and entered the base he had constructed himself, and the moment they stepped inside, they were instantly transported elsewhere. A short while later, Kunai reopened the system and found that a new feature had become available. He recalled that in the world of infinity, he once commanded 8 subordinates, each possessing the power of 1,000 men. Summoning them consumed a tremendous amount of skill points, but their abilities were well worth the cost. However, given his current points, Kunai could only summon 1 subordinate, so he had to choose wisely. After careful thought, he realized he needed a defense against magic, so he chose to summon Yang, a brilliant doctor and skilled scientist who specialized in creating anti-magic devices. Yet she had one flaw, a fiery temper that sometimes drove her to attack even her own allies. Still, Kunai decided to overlook that in favor of her rare genius. When he finally summoned her, Yang appeared before him in a flash, greeting him with a cautious smile. Kunai calmly explained that they were now in a world completely different from the one they once knew. When Yang saw the base that Kunai had built, the thought of heading to a city called Dark Night crossed her mind, for it was said to possess the most advanced technology in the entire empire. Kunai, meanwhile, was thinking to himself, if we were to build a grand and modern fortress in a fantasy world like this, it would be nearly impossible. Yang then asked him, "What exactly do you intend to do?" He replied calmly, "I want to modify this base and turn it into a field hospital. But please, do not kill the patients inside it." Kunai quickly realized that he was dealing with a complicated and unpredictable personality, one that required extreme caution. Luna and Jean entered the place, sitting down to ask Kunai about the identity of the strange woman. He explained that Yang had been summoned to assist him, and then asked Yang to try healing the old wound on Jean's leg. Yang approached them, and suddenly, each of her fingers transformed into a precise medical instrument. Jean sat there mesmerized by her abilities, and within moments, Yang succeeded in completely healing the wound, erasing every trace of it as though it had never existed. Jean thanked her with heartfelt gratitude, overjoyed that she could finally walk normally again. She then took a few steps beside Kunai, joking that she was glad she would no longer have to be carried on his back. Kunai smiled and replied, grateful to Yang, "I was right to choose you from the beginning." We then shift to Mikan and Yuka, who were seated in a restaurant, recounting to the owner the incredible power Kunai had displayed against the Sand Wolves. Meanwhile, we see Otto, the founder of the Demon Order, gathered with his men. One of them, named Kang, reported that Kunai had disappeared the entire day, as if hiding somewhere. He wondered aloud how they could possibly defeat him now that he was without a weapon. But Kang replied that Kunai's strength was immense, and that no one could stand against him at this point. Otto responded in a grave tone that the matter of Kunai was far greater than that of the Gruul Beast alone. Therefore, the Demon Order must be prepared to make greater sacrifices and muster even more power in order to destroy the capital completely. Only then would Kunai perish along with it. His followers nodded in grim agreement to his command. Later, Kunai was seen traveling with his companions. On their way, their vehicle passed near an abandoned desert village said to belong to Luna. They decided to stop and take a look at its condition, and Kunai was struck by how desolate and ruinous it appeared. Luna explained that she had nothing to do with the village's administration, that the elders were the ones responsible for its state. Kunai realized then that while Luna was indeed a master of magic, she was weak in governance and management. Through telepathic communication, Yang remarked to Kunai that the village leaders seemed to mock Luna's authority, to which Kunai replied that the entire place felt like a dead land, one unfit for life or growth. An idea suddenly sparked in Kunai's mind to build the hospital he had been planning within the village itself. When he presented the idea to Luna, she immediately agreed. He then told her that he also intended to construct a hot spring beside the hospital so that they could generate great profits from both projects together. At that very moment, the village guard arrived, his face filled with disbelief when he realized that the man standing before him, the very same one mentioned in newspapers and grand headlines as the Demon Lord, was none other than Kunai himself. Luna told the guard confidently that she and Kunai had become partners, while Kunai instructed him to inform the village administrators that from this moment onward, Luna and Kunai would be taking charge of the village's affairs and management. But the guard replied hesitantly, insisting that such a decision could not be made so easily, and that he must first report to his superiors. Kunai smirked mockingly and said, "Do you even believe what you're saying? What superiors are you talking about? Luna is the true ruler of this village, and it is her right to appoint whomever she wishes to assist her." The guard fell silent, unable to respond, afraid that if he angered Kunai, he might indeed devour him as the rumors claimed. Without another word, he hurried away. Kunai then turned to Luna and reassured her, saying with calm determination, "I will make this village rise again with my own hands, and together we shall make it flourish and bring forth great fortune." At that same time, 2 farmers from the village, both belonging to the Rabbit clan, were harvesting their carrot crops. Yet they found the plants wilted and weak due to the lack of water and the poor quality of the soil. The cost of transporting water was high, leaving the land parched and cracked. It was known that the Rabbit clan grew only carrots by nature, and all members of their kind lived solely in Luna's village. Kunai quickly realized that the capital had deliberately exiled them to this desolate place to keep them out of sight. He approached the farmers and asked where the nearest well was, and they pointed him in its direction. When he arrived, he sent Yang down to inspect its condition, only for her to discover that the underground water had completely dried up. Kunai sat down, thinking of a way to extract water, then opened the item storage within his system, where he found a metal wheel with a bucket at its edge, an ancient tool capable of drawing water even from completely dried wells. Kunai took the device out from his system, leaving Luna astonished. She asked him where he obtained such tools, and he replied with a confident smile, "All I do is use my intelligence." Then he attached the device to the well and began to operate it. Luna was entirely certain that it was impossible for water to flow from this dead well, but the greatest surprise occurred when water gushed forth abundantly. Everyone froze in shock as Kunai explained that this was a magical wheel capable of drawing water even from completely dried wells. However, he asked the farmers to keep this a secret so that rumors wouldn't spread and ignite conflict within the village. Soon after, he began thinking of another problem the farmers faced: the lack of fertilizer necessary to enrich the soil and increase their harvests. Kunai opened his system once again and produced a special fertilizer to help the farmers grow healthy carrots without them withering. Luna began to suspect that Kunai had a hidden motive behind his generous acts. He smiled and said, "You're right. I'm not doing this out of charity. I'm simply trying to win the farmers' favor so that when I build the hospital and the hot springs, they'll be willing to work there." Luna didn't object to his words, for she understood that in the end, everything he did would benefit her village. We then shift to a meeting among prominent figures, where the leader, Angel, spoke anxiously about Luna's cooperation with Kunai, saying the matter was suspicious and that Kunai might be nothing more than a fraud. Marshall responded that as long as Luna felt comfortable working with him, it was best not to interfere in her affairs. Yet Donna objected strongly, questioning how they could ignore the situation while Kunai's face filled the newspapers and a massive bounty had been placed on his head. Marshall calmly replied, "He may have seemed dangerous in the past, but Luna is a wise girl. If she trusts him, then he must have a redeeming side." Donna erupted in anger, shouting, "Are you defending him because he's your relative? This man once burned an entire village to ash. What's to stop him from doing the same to Luna's?" Angel intervened firmly, urging Donna to calm down. She explained that they still did not know what Luna's true intentions were, so it would be unwise to disrupt her plans. Instead, they should watch from a distance. Donna fell silent out of respect for her authority, and the tension in the hall slowly eased. Then Keller arrived at the meeting, and Angel immediately asked her to recount what had happened during the attack she had suffered. Keller began her story, explaining that a man known as the Silver Dragon had suddenly appeared and defeated every member of the demon clan who had assaulted her. She went on describing his overwhelming power and majestic presence with clear exaggeration, prompting Angel to stare at her in disbelief and say, "It seems both Luna and Keller have lost their minds lately." We then move to Noma's tavern, where two adventurers sit discussing the sudden appearance of a dragon warrior who threatens to destroy the city if no one dares to stop him. Noma intervenes and shows them a picture of Konai, saying they could seek his help as he is an incredibly powerful man. In a corner of the tavern, Mikan and Yuka overhear the conversation, their faces clouded with jealousy and irritation. It seems they are unhappy that other adventurers have begun to recognize Konai's strength, something they once considered their own secret. The scene then shifts to a luxurious restaurant called Artemis, where Konai sits with the girls. Luna remarks that this place is her favorite, one she often visits, but this time the reason for coming is special. They are here to celebrate Jin, who has finally recovered her leg thanks to Dr. Yang's skillful treatment. Konai reaches into his system's inventory and brings out a strawberry cake, presenting it to Jin as a gift. She smiles with pure joy and thanks him warmly as they enjoy the cheerful atmosphere and savor the cake together. The door of the restaurant opens and a graceful woman steps inside. Adorned with dazzling jewels that gleam beneath the chandelier's light, she captures everyone's attention. And Konai, for a moment, finds himself mesmerized by her elegance and the brilliance of her ornaments. The lady apologized for interrupting their meal, then said she had come to discuss something important. Kunai welcomed her warmly and invited her to sit with them. During their conversation, he realized that the woman knew his name, and that she was aware he was called the Lord of Demons. He spoke to Luna through telepathy, asking who the woman was. Luna replied that she was one of the wealthiest ladies in the city, and that under no circumstances should they make an enemy of her. Kunai decided he had to earn her trust by any means necessary. The lady joined their table and soon learned that they were there to celebrate Jin's recovery. Smiling graciously, she asked Kunai what he thought of the city. He replied that it was beautiful compared to the impoverished lands he had passed through on his travels. Then Kunai presented his latest invention, a magical soap taken from his system. Luna stepped in to support him, praising the soap enthusiastically and claiming it could remove every imperfection from the skin. The lady noticed how flawless and radiant Luna's and Jin's complexions were, smooth and luminous without blemish. Kunai offered her the soap as a gift, using it as a way to draw her closer, then explained that he planned to create a hot spring in Luna's village, where the soap's effects would become even more extraordinary. He spoke passionately about his dreams and future projects, and the lady appeared impressed by both his vision and confidence. But suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled violently. A powerful earthquake struck the city. The restaurant owner rushed in, shouting that the city was under attack by the Demon Guild. Kunai immediately dashed outside while Yang prepared to protect those inside. Luna tried to follow him, insisting she should help, but he stopped her, warning that she might be the enemy's true target and that she would be safer staying put. Jin looked at him with worry, but he smiled reassuringly and said he was merely going to digest dinner before returning, his calm demeanor leaving the rich lady speechless at his composure. Kunai leapt across rooftops with incredible speed until he reached the heart of the chaos. The Demon Guild had set houses ablaze and were attacking citizens in every direction. He realized their goal was to eliminate him entirely. Meanwhile, Mikan and Yuka were also fighting fiercely to defend the city. Mikan slashed through one of the enemy groups with a powerful strike of her sword, sending them crashing to the ground. But before she could recover, they ambushed her from behind with ice projectiles. Yuka intervened at the last second, using her ice palm technique to trap the attackers within a colossal hand made of solid frost. And then, suddenly, the frozen palm shattered into countless shards. A massive explosion erupts, shaking the entire place. The bodies of the gang members are scattered across the ground as their furious leader shouts, ordering his men to attack with full force. They number in the dozens. How could such a large group fail to defeat only 2 girls? Mikan and Yuka are startled as an overwhelming number of demon clan members emerge from the alleys and shadows, surrounding them from every direction. In a critical moment, one of the demons leaps down from above, attempting to strike them, but Kunai appears suddenly, slicing through the air with his sword and killing the attacker in a single blow. He looks at the remaining enemies with a challenging glare and says coldly, "Show me what you've got." Come, let's see who's stronger. Kunai stands tall in the center of the square, raising his hand as a surge of magical energy radiates from him, shaking the very earth. He unleashes it all at once, and a large number of enemies collapse instantly. With only a few still standing, Kunai conjures a gigantic hammer from nothingness and hurls it at them with destructive power, crushing them completely and leaving their leader gasping for his final breaths. Overwhelmed by shame at meeting his end at Kunai's hands, the leader decides to sacrifice himself and the rest of his men. In a desperate act, he summons a colossal demonic beast, hoping it will be strong enough to kill Kunai with ease. The beast materializes, massive in size, its eyes burning with infernal fire. It stares at Kunai and Mikan as though they were a delicious meal and lets out a roar so powerful that nearby buildings tremble. At that moment, Kunai activates the barrier skill, forming a transparent dome of energy that seals off the entire area. No one can enter or leave. The beast prepares to strike, but Kunai hurls a massive boulder at its head, knocking it off balance. He begins taunting it with words, provoking its anger until it loses control and charges at him wildly. Kunai dodges effortlessly and reactivates the barrier to block its full assault. Then Kunai decides to end the battle. He activates the fighting spirit skill, increasing both his offensive and defensive power by 10%. His extraordinary energy ignites within his body, enveloping him in a radiant light so intense it terrifies the monster. The demonic creature steps back, trembling in fear before the overwhelming power it senses. Its fiery eyes plead for mercy, but Kunai approaches slowly, his voice cold and mocking. You've spent your life slaughtering others without mercy. Now it's time for you to taste death yourself. He delivers a devastating punch to the beast's face, sending it flying high into the sky. Then, with precise timing, he hurls a magical bomb after it. The explosion blossoms mid-air, turning the monster into scattered ash. The townspeople gather, eyes wide in astonishment at Kunai's overwhelming power. Cheers of gratitude fill the air as they thank him for saving them. Yuka steps forward, her heart full of gratitude, thanking him for rescuing her a second time. She tells him she's willing to do anything to repay his kindness, but Kunai refuses her offer with a calm smile. Yuka, in her innocent way, assumes he's turning her down because he likes her and is simply too shy to admit it. Otto convened his followers in the Hall of Demons and ordered a girl named Tron to mobilize every force of the Order for a full-scale assault on the capital. All greeted him with submissive obedience, for the coming battle would be decisive. At the upscale restaurant Artemis, a jester called Kamiya performed acrobatic tricks to amuse the guests and ease the tension after the recent attack. Yet his eyes fell upon Luna, sitting calmly in a corner without any guard, and a mysterious smile crossed his face as he thought, "It seems my next target stands before me." The Demon Order had indeed plotted to assassinate Luna, seeing her as a threat, and meanwhile Konai's girls were frantic with worry because he had not returned from confronting the Order. The mysterious lady attempted to soothe them, assuring everyone that Konai was fine, while the jester Kamiya approached their table to perform a few illusions. Yang, the madwoman, interrupted him. "Let me show you better tricks," she declared, then severed both her arms before his eyes and replaced them in an instant, closing the stunt with a derisive whisper. "The scent of the poison in your pocket is strong. You intend to use it on someone. Find a better toxin, and if I see your face here again, I will tear you limb from limb." Flustered, Kamiya fled. Elsewhere, Killer and her personal guard fought savagely against mummified creatures, slaying them one by one as the numbers rose. Suddenly, two twin girls of the Demon Order appeared. Killer charged one of them, activating the Wheel of Slaughter, a lethal beam that pierced and tore her enemy apart, while Marshall, leader of the soldiers, cleaved the other twin in half with a single stroke of his blade. The scene shifts to a girl named Mink, standing before a large force of Demon Order members who had besieged a district. Mink invoked the Sacred Rain skill, raining down magical bombs that detonated with devastating effect, annihilating most of the attackers. After the battle, she bestowed a warding magic upon the townspeople to protect them from future assaults. The grateful villagers thanked her, and she addressed them confidently. "Join me and fight every hand that spreads injustice and ruin." At that very moment, the remaining members of the Demon Clan, those whom Konai had defeated, chose to end their own lives, performing a dark ritual to summon a supreme demonic entity who would avenge them. From the depths of the underworld emerged Oward, known as the Prince of Darkness. He glanced around in disdain, his fiery eyes narrowing as he sensed the magical barrier encasing the city. With a growl of irritation, he said, "What is this wretched place I have been summoned to?" Meanwhile, Angel, the leader of the governors, felt a surge of overwhelming dark energy emanating from within the city, a power belonging to a high-ranking demon. Without hesitation, she raised a protective barrier around the governors to shield them from harm. Yet, Keller and her guardian Font had already laid eyes on the Prince of Darkness himself. Ignoring Keller's urgent warnings that their foe was far beyond their level, Font recklessly charged toward the demon in a burst of blind courage. In a single motion, Oward unleashed a devastating laser beam from his eyes, striking Font directly and hurling him lifeless to the ground. He glanced at the fallen warrior with utter contempt and scoffed, "Truly pathetic. I never imagined a creature weaker than an ant would dare to challenge me." Then, with a mere gesture, he activated a powerful ability that instantly nullified Angel's protective barrier. The effort to resist drained her entirely. She collapsed to her knees, unable to restore it as her magic waned away. At that moment, Keller stepped forward, gripping her massive hammer tightly, fully aware of the peril she faced, yet determined to stand her ground. From afar, Mink appeared and called out boldly, "Oward, Prince of Darkness, show us your true power. Let us witness the extent of your so-called greatness." Oward grew visibly irritated. Surrounded by two opponents too feeble to pose a real threat, Keller charged first, swinging her hammer down upon his head, but his dark barrier instantly repelled the blow. She attacked again with equal force, only to be denied once more by the impenetrable shield. From behind, Mink attempted a surprise assault with her high-powered weapons, closing in on him, but Oward turned and unleashed a crimson beam of darkness toward her and Keller alike. Keller tried desperately to counter it with her own barrier, yet the intensity of the beam tore it apart into countless fragments of light. In that instant, Tron hurled a vial of Hades substance, a paralyzing agent known only to the Demon Clan. Upon contact, both Keller and Mink were rendered motionless, their limbs frozen in place. Seizing the moment, Oward advanced on the helpless warriors, striking Keller violently in the abdomen with his leg, sending her flying through the air. He then turned and delivered a crushing blow to Mink, slamming her to the ground. Both women lay bloodied and broken, their strength fading rapidly. Finally, Oward raised his hand and unleashed the fatal beam of darkness, consuming their souls entirely, ending their lives in an instant. Angel stood watching the battle in distress, struggling to reactivate the barrier she had created to protect the rulers, but her strength was completely drained. Meanwhile, Konai stood at a distance, momentarily captivated by Angel's beauty, unaware of the chaos raging around him, until the roar of battle jolted him back to reality. Instantly, he activated the personality shift skill, transforming into his alter ego known as the Silver Dragon, and dashed toward the battlefield. He found Keller collapsed on the ground and immediately helped her to her feet, nullifying the effects of Hades' matter just as he had done before. Shocked, Aurad, the Dark Prince, demanded, "Who are you, boy?" Konai replied coldly, "The scent of a demon slayer clings to you, and I stand as your executioner." Aurad lunged at him, but Konai countered with a fierce kick to his abdomen, forcing him several steps backward. Without pause, Konai followed with a spinning strike amplified by a 5% magical enhancer, then twisted midair and struck again, slamming Aurad violently into the ground. Konai surged forward and delivered a final kick that sent the Dark Prince crashing into a wall. Enraged by the humiliation, Aurad's fury ignited like wildfire. He then activated the Dark Beam ability, dashing toward Tron to seize another portion of Hades' matter, only to discover it had already been consumed. Desperate, he absorbed its residual power directly from her blood, his aura flaring to its peak. Konai quickly approached Tron, attempting to revive her. He pressed a healing kiss upon her lips, restoring her vitality. She acknowledged her recovery, yet her face remained void of any emotion or gratitude. Realizing Konai's extraordinary healing power, Aurad thought to himself that this must be a new and dangerous breed of dragon, a threat beyond comprehension. His body convulsed and began to mutate as he gathered every ounce of his remaining strength for the final confrontation. Suddenly, the Dark Prince transformed into a colossal wolf-like beast and growled, declaring to Konai that he had been forced to reveal his true form. But the Silver Dragon remained utterly unfazed. In a flash, he unleashed a devastating blow that shattered Aurad's monstrous body into countless fragments of ash. The spectators stood frozen, their eyes wide with disbelief at Kunai's overwhelming power. When the battle was over, Kunai calmly dispelled the barrier encasing the city, allowing peace to return once more. Kunai returned to his true form and approached Angel, who was stunned the moment she saw him sitting before her. In that instant, she realized that he was none other than the Lord of Demons, the very one whose name dominated the news every single day. With unease in her voice, she asked about his connection to Luna. Kunai replied calmly, "At first, she saw me as a wicked being, but as time passed, a bond of trust and respect grew between us." Angel's suspicion deepened. She feared he might be plotting something sinister against the kingdom. "Are your intentions to harm us?" she asked warily. Kunai smiled faintly and said, "In time, through what I've done and what I intend to do, you will understand that my intentions are good, and that everyone has merely misunderstood me." He then told her he needed her help with something important. He wished to conduct research on Serve and asked if she could guide him to a library or a source where he could gather information. Angel was taken aback by his request, thinking to herself, could it be that he wants to learn Serve's weaknesses to destroy her? How dare he ask me such a thing so openly? She answered coldly, "It's impossible for me to tell you anything about her. Search on your own if you wish." Kunai turned to leave, but she suddenly stopped him and asked, "Were you the one who defeated the Demon King who appeared yesterday?" He gave a faint, mocking smile and replied, "Demon King? That one was far too weak to even be called a demon." Angel felt he was arrogant to belittle such immense power, but deep down she knew he wasn't one to speak without reason. Soon after, Kunai accessed the system and discovered that his skill points had increased thanks to his recent battle. Now he was finally capable of carrying out his grand project, building the hospital and the hot spring lake he had always dreamed of. He took Jin with him and headed to the library in search of information about the Serve faction, but they found nothing. Still, Kunai showed no sign of frustration. He was confident he would eventually uncover what he sought. While reading, Jin came across a passage explaining that rare weapons and armor were often found inside dungeons. Kunai asked the librarian if that was true, and the man confirmed it, adding that many priceless treasures could be discovered there. At that moment, Kunai remembered the powerful weapon Angel had wielded and decided he needed to enhance his resistance to magic, for despite his overwhelming strength, his defense against magical attacks remained his greatest weakness. As Kunai walked out of the library with Jin, Tron suddenly appeared before him. She told him that she possessed a skill allowing her to see people's emotions and souls, and that she was certain he was the Silver Dragon who had slain the Demon King the night before. Kunai denied it with a faint smile and said, "I have no idea who you're talking about. You must be mistaken." Tron tried to continue the conversation, but eventually replied calmly, "It doesn't matter whether you are or not. I only wish to meet the Silver Dragon to thank him for saving me." Kunai then told Tron that he would allow her to meet the Silver Dragon, but on one condition, that she obey him completely and carry out all his orders without hesitation. Tron agreed immediately. Kunai smiled and told her that he had recently opened a new workplace and was short on staff, asking her to lend him a hand there. He took her with him to the hotel, where Luna intervened irritably, saying, "That girl is a demon. How could you even think of adding her to our team?" But Kunai replied confidently, "I need her for the work that will take place in your village." Luna snapped back sharply, "You don't recognize rulers or demons, do you?" Kunai answered calmly, "When I bring change to your village, you and your sisters will realize that my intentions are truly pure." After that, Kunai asked everyone to gather so they could begin the transfer to Luna's village. And the moment he finished speaking, they found themselves there instantly. Luna was astonished, unable to believe they had arrived in her village so quickly. Kunai then told Angel that he wanted to begin immediately with the construction of the hospital and the hot springs. He went to check on the farmers he had once helped and found them grateful, thanking him for his kindness, as their crops had greatly improved thanks to the water and fertilizer he had provided. Kunai then headed to the base he had established in the village and, using his powers, transformed it into a fully equipped field hospital. He and Angel entered to explore the interior and found it advanced and luxurious. He asked her to spread the word among both the poor and the wealthy about the hospital's opening, explaining that he would not charge the poor high medical fees, but he would take every last coin from the rich. Then Kunai moved to a site adjacent to the hospital and constructed a luxurious hot spring resort consisting of 3 floors. The interior design was soothing and elegant, with a grand restaurant offering every type of cuisine and comfortable rooms for those wishing to stay overnight. Once its construction was complete, Kunai gathered the farmers after their work in the fields and assigned them new positions in the resort himself. As he reflected on it, Kunai realized that it would be improper to have such a lavish resort for the wealthy in the middle of a poor village. Therefore, he decided to develop the village first, making it suitable for the guests who would eventually visit. He opened the system and entered the data of a new assistant from among the 8, named Sammy, a man of remarkable intelligence, with a sister capable of caring for the children who might accompany visiting families. Sammy also possessed exceptional combat skills, qualifying him to protect Luna's village in Kunai's absence. Kunai summoned him immediately, and Sammy appeared before him, greeting him warmly. The two sat together and spoke for a long while. With astonishment in his voice, Sammy said, "This world is completely different from the one I once lived in. The Great Empire." He felt a mix of awe and dread when he learned that Yang would be his assistant, for she was known as a madwoman. The same woman who had once severed the jester's arm and reattached it without the slightest flicker of emotion. Sammy then asked what Kunai intended to do in this new world, assuring him that he would follow wherever he led, for if not for Kunai, both he and his younger sister would have perished long ago. He said earnestly, "I stand with you in everything, my lord. My sister and I are alive today because of you." Kunai replied that his plan was to manage a small, impoverished village, to expand the hospital and the hot springs, and to train the villagers in combat and negotiation, so that they could one day bargain with the wealthy for the sake of their own prosperity. Sammy smiled and said, "My lord, you don't just need me. You need someone who can handle all these responsibilities at once." Kunai returned his smile with quiet confidence and said, "I believe in you, Sammy. You're a genius. There's nothing beyond your reach." Afterward, Kunai turned his thoughts to preparing the area before the arrival of the mysterious lady. He took a magical artifact he possessed and went to sell it to the same merchant he had dealt with before. The merchant was astounded by the artifact, for it produced enchanting music on its own without being touched. Kunai then said calmly, "Set the price yourself. Whatever amount you deem fair, I will accept." The man sensed that Kunai was testing him, that if he named a price lower than what the item was truly worth, Kunai would never deal with him again. So, with confidence, he said, "Listen, Kunai, I'll pay 15 gold coins. That's quite a hefty sum." Indeed, Kunai accepted the payment and began to think about how to invest it wisely. First, he decided to purchase fine clothing for the farmers who would work at the hospital and the hot springs. He also gave them 7 gold coins as a bonus, urging them to complete their work quickly. Afterwards, he headed to the market to buy vegetables and other food supplies needed for the restaurant attached to the hot springs. That night, Kunai sat alone in contemplation. Then, he transformed into his other self, the Silver Dragon. A surge of power coursed through his body, and he realized that in this form, he could defeat the strong and protect the weak. He felt destined to become a true hero, one who would shatter every obstacle in his path and rise to become the strongest man in the world. The next morning, the village streets were filled with joyful children enjoying the food Kunai had brought. Afterwards, Sammy took them to clean the area in preparation for the arrival of the mysterious lady. Meanwhile, Momo and Ken wore the elegant clothes Kunai had bought for them and practiced how to properly welcome the guests. A week later, the mysterious lady finally arrived in the village, expressing her deep admiration for its beauty. Kunai said to her with confidence, "In just a month or two, this place will look entirely different from what you see now." She was about to thank him for the magical soap he had given her earlier, but a sudden voice interrupted their conversation. It was her personal guard, a man with one eye covered by a cloth due to a severe injury. Kunai asked him about the cause of his wound, and the man explained that he had once served under Marshall, a high-ranking figure in society. Years ago, he was attacked by a ferocious magical beast that left him in this condition. Since losing his sight, Sabe had felt worthless and broken. Kunai told him that he would take him to Yang, a skilled doctor capable of healing his eyes, but Sabe did not believe him. No treatment had ever worked before. When they arrived at the hospital, which was splendidly equipped, Yang greeted Saba with a calm smile and gently removed the cloth from his eyes. He told her that he could only see vague, blurry outlines, but Yang reassured him that in her homeland there was a special medicine capable of curing his condition. She brought out a strange potion, miraculous eye drops, and applied them to his eyes. Within mere seconds, his vision returned completely. Sabe sat in stunned silence, unable to believe what had just happened. Even Barv herself was speechless. Then, overwhelmed with joy, Sabe burst into tears of pure happiness. Parfi told him that he could now return to Marshall and serve him as he once did. Indeed, he hurried back there, while Parfi presented Yang with an enormous gift, a massive golden ingot worth billions in value. At that very moment, the scene shifted to a flashback set 10 years earlier, when Luna was only 6 years old. She was running with her friend toward the church to buy bread, but when they arrived, they found the gate closed. A man stepped out and, with scorn in his voice, asked how a filthy girl like her dared approach such a sacred place. Luna grew furious and declared that one day she would become a member of the church and make him regret his words. Her anger unleashed an immense surge of energy that sent the man and those with him flying through the air. 2 years passed, and Luna managed to prove herself, earning her place as a member of the church. She thanked the head of the church, saying it was an honor beyond words, then asked that her closest friend be allowed to join as well, but he coldly informed her that her friend had been executed for belonging to a corrupt sect. Luna broke down in tears, insisting that her friend had been kind-hearted and never once shown evil, but the leader replied that anyone who wished to remain within the church must choose their acquaintances wisely and associate only with the righteous. Another 2 years went by, and Luna rose to the rank of a saint, capable of wielding light and golden magic. She was then entrusted with overseeing the very village that Kunai was now developing. Luna's thoughts were interrupted when she heard Kunai's voice, informing her that Lady Parfi had arrived and asking her to carry out their plan. Luna went out to welcome Parfi, gently taking her hands and guiding her to the grand bathing halls designed for relaxation. Parfi admired the beauty of the place. Her stay in Luna Village became a truly luxurious retreat. Yet, Angel was furious. Not only had Kunai taken Luna away from her, but now he sought to charm a renowned woman like Parfi as well. Keller, however, seemed unconcerned and told Angel to stop obsessing over Kunai, reminding her that Luna was happy with him and loved him sincerely. Deep down, Keller wished she could meet the Silver Dragon herself to show him her own feelings, and so, there were now 2 women who loved the same man. Elsewhere, Sammy was meticulously drawing a map of the village when Yang entered, inquiring about his plans for the coming days. He explained that he intended to divide the village into distinct sectors, each serving a specific purpose. Sammy noted that such a plan would require a substantial amount of money, but Konai assured him that they would sell the golden artifact that Yang had obtained from Barf, which would provide sufficient funds to finance the project. Yang then suggested confidently, "Why not ask Barf to assist us in developing the village?" Sammy rejected the idea emphatically, insisting, "This land belongs to us. We must not allow nobles to control it." Feeling slightly embarrassed by her proposal, Yang decided to take Sammy for some medical examinations to ensure his health and well-being. Meanwhile, Konai was relaxing by a small lake when Tron suddenly appeared before him. He ordered her swiftly to leave before any of the girls could see her, but she replied with certainty, asserting that she knew his true identity, that he was the Silver Dragon. Konai's expression darkened with anger. "Did I not warn you before never to mention this in front of anyone?" he exclaimed. Without hesitation, he seized her and hurried her to the girls' bathhouse. Afterwards, he returned to his room, only to discover that the food he had purchased had been depleted. At that moment, Jin entered, and that night she slept in his room along with Luna. The following morning, Konai awoke before them and wrote a note explaining that he was heading to the capital and would return by evening, requesting that they cause no disorder in his absence. As he traveled toward the capital, he was intercepted by Yuka and Mikan. He spoke with casual warmth, saying, "I missed you both," even though he could not recall their names properly. Inwardly, he wished he could remember names more easily in this world. An idea then struck him. Why not create identification cards for the villagers, so they would be recognized by name rather than merely as carrot growers? Yuka asked why he had disappeared for such a long period. He explained that he had been occupied with developing the village. Meanwhile, Mikan began to realize that the rumors circulating about him might indeed hold truth. Yuka then inquired further, "And what brings you to the capital now?" He replied that he was seeking out the Adventurers Guild to inquire about items and elements that interact with magic, as he wished to enhance his resistance against it. Yet, he withheld the full truth, leaving her unaware that he had additional motives. Smiling, Yuka mentioned that she wanted to invite him to a nearby cafe to express their gratitude, for he had entered 2 battles on their behalf. Konai agreed, and accompanied them to the cafe owned by their friend Noma. When Noma saw him, she could hardly believe that the famous demon lord, renowned for his power, was sitting in her own place. The cafe was filled with patrons, all eager to offer him drinks. Noma sat down to serve him beverages, saying, "Drink as you wish. I shall not charge you a penny." Shortly after, she brought him a large quantity of food. Konai wished to speak with them regarding an important matter, but Yuka was acting strangely as usual, so he redirected his conversation to Mikan, who was initially hesitant but forced herself to speak, out of appreciation for all that he had done for her before, having saved her multiple times. Then Konai asked her, saying, "Tell me, Mikan, how exactly does the Adventurers Guild system operate?" Yuka explained that adventurers fight monsters and receive rewards for defeating them, and during their battles they might uncover treasures buried beneath the ruins. Adventurers usually take parts of these monsters and sell them to the guild, and the rarer and more beautiful the part, the higher its monetary value. There were also ranks among adventurers. The higher the rank and strength, the better the treatment and greater the rewards. Konai realized that this system resembled professional football players in his world, discovered by clubs that offer them enormous sums, allowing each player to choose the team that pays the most. He understood that this world bore a striking resemblance to his own. However, Yuka warned him that the adventurer's profession was not easy, as there were times when no monsters appeared to fight, and even in fortified towers, they might find nothing, meaning they would earn no income. Konai asked her what kind of items people typically discovered in the fortified towers. Mikan replied that there were numerous treasures such as weapons and armor, items made from metals, others crafted from the fangs of powerful monsters, and rare elements forged from special materials. There were even legendary items, such as Engel's weapon and Killer's mark. Konai then asked whether there was a place to purchase such items, or if one had to venture into the towers to obtain them. Yuka answered that while some places sold these items, their quality was often poor, and the more money one paid, the better the item received. Konai decided that he would go there himself. Mikan suggested accompanying him, and he immediately agreed, especially since his assistants Yang and Sammy were busy with village affairs, making this a perfect opportunity. Meanwhile, Angel sat praying for her magical power to increase so she could save Luna, worried for her as long as she remained close to Konai. She resolved that she would go negotiate with him, and if he refused, she would kill him. Suddenly, she activated her instant teleportation skill and arrived in Luna's village. There, Sammy instructed a girl who possessed magical energy to absorb the power of a mystical crystal located in the village. Upon seeing her, he believed that Angel was that very girl, and asked her to draw the energy from the crystal. At that moment, Luna approached from behind and sensed her presence, inquiring about her purpose. Angel replied that Demon Lord Konai was exploiting her and insisted that she go to the capital, urging Luna to accompany her. However, Luna refused, explaining that she was preoccupied with restoring her village. Angel then suspected that Konai might be using that village as a base to gather monsters, and she asked Luna where he had obtained the funds for the renovations. Luna explained that he had sold a single gold piece. At that moment, Tron appeared, as she required Luna's assistance with certain tasks. She ordered Luna, Momo, and Kion to take her sister Angel to the hot springs, hoping that the experience might change her mind regarding Konai. Angel accompanied the 2 girls, and as soon as she entered the hot springs located there, Angel was captivated by the beauty of the place, yet she was startled by a slight explosion, only to find Konai sitting inside, waiting for her. She was surprised by his presence and considered setting a trap for him, but Konai calmly informed her that this place was merely public baths for the villagers. In a sharp tone, Angel asked, "What have you done to deceive Luna and Lady Parf?" Konai replied quietly, "I do not force anyone to do anything. Everyone in this village is here by their own will." Angel told him that she had insufficient evidence to believe him. Konai responded, "I do not care whether you believe me or not. Just sit here in the hot springs and spare me the conversation." Hesitant, Angel took a seat and Konai offered her a warm drink. She eyed it suspiciously, suspecting it might be poisoned. Using her magical power, Angel tested the cup and discovered it contained no poison. In a serious tone, Konai said, "The only poison in this kingdom comes from those who govern it, for they care nothing for the lives of the people living within it, nor do they plan to help them. All they care about is themselves." Angel recalled his words and imagined him speaking of the village from which Jin had come, where the people treated them cruelly instead of helping them out of poverty. After a moment of silence, she admitted, "You are right, I cannot argue with that." She drank the warm beverage, which granted her great energy. Konai then took a small device from his storage and said, "Take this. It will increase your power even more." Angel accepted it and immediately felt a noticeable change in her energy. After leaving the bath hall, Konai asked how she had arrived there. She concealed the truth, claiming she had come on foot. Smiling, Konai said, "I will take you to the castle now," and then activated his own teleportation ability, leaving Angel astonished at his skill. Before departing, Konai asked her not to reveal anything that had occurred that day. Angel thought to herself, "This boy is truly strange. Only the rulers can grant people such auras." And here ends the story, dear viewers. We hope you enjoyed it. If you want a second season, let us know in the comments. Before closing the video, don't forget to click the like button to support us, subscribe for more episodes, and activate the notification bell to watch all the latest anime on the channel. Share your thoughts in the comments, and we'll see you in new episodes. Farewell.